You're listening to episode 100, solo episode, answering your questions and an update. Welcome to the Grass Gets Greener podcast, the show for survivors by survivors. I'm your host, Melissa Wilson, a bullying survivor and anti-bullying advocate. And each week you'll hear from a survivor who has overcome a traumatic experience to go on to not only survive, but thrive, so that you can too, starting now. Hey there, welcome to episode 100. Crazy, right? But definitely exciting, and thank you so much for being here for it. This has been almost 2.5 years in the making. Episode 1 was on October 27th, 2014. So definitely thank you for being here, whether you've been here the whole time or for just part of it. I do this show for you, and over the past year in particular, I've been hearing more and more from you guys about how the show has been helping you, and that means a lot to me, and it gives me the motivation to keep it going. And it's been an honor for me to connect with all the guests I've had on, and to have them bring hope and inspiration to you through their stories. So this is a special episode, and it's going to be a solo one. And what I wanted to do for this episode was to answer your questions, and so that's what I'll be doing here today. But before I do that, I want to take some time to talk about what's been going on in my life over the past few weeks or so, and why there was a delay in getting this episode out. As you guys may know, I like to be transparent about what's going on with me, because you deserve that. And, as survivors, we usually grow up not being able to trust others because of what's happened to us, and I don't want you to feel like you can't trust me. Plus, I've spent many years feeling like I had to hold things back because of shame that I carried, and I've gotten to a point now where I realize that I no longer have to carry the shame that belongs to other people and not to me. And having that perspective has made it easier for me to talk about my past in particular, but it's also made me more open in the present as well. So anyways, that's where I'm coming from, and I've definitely evolved as a person since I started this show, and there have been changes in my life over the course of that time, and most of them good. There have also been some challenges as well, and one of the biggest ones has been my decision to come off of an antidepressant that I've been on for the past 15 years, and I did a solo episode talking about that back in October, so go check that out if you want to hear more about that. But more recently, I've been going through another transition in my life, and it's been a difficult one. And I may get choked up as I'm talking about it, so I apologize in advance. But on January 19th, I had to do the hardest thing I've ever had to do, and that was to put my dog down. He had been sick for about a month up to that point, but I really didn't expect that he wasn't going to make it. He was about 8 years old, I believe. I adopted him when he was about 1.5 years, and they didn't know his exact birthday. He was my little buddy, and he was always by my side, even as I recorded for the podcast. We were kindred spirits, I would say. As it were, it's believed that he was abused as a puppy, and as a result, he was really scared when I got him, and he didn't trust people either, but he trusted me. And him and I, in a way, rescued each other, I think. So it's really weird and difficult to not have him around anymore, and for the first week or so, I couldn't do much. I was just allowing myself to grieve and trying to go easy on myself and focus on self-care. And then slowly started getting back into things. I think that's what he would have wanted me to do, and that's what I wanted to do for him. And there are a few things that I'm already taking away from this experience that I want to pass on to you now, in case it can help you in some way, because these are things that apply not only to loss and grief, and I want this episode to be valuable to you and to be a helpful resource for you. And as a result of my current circumstances, I thought it would be fitting to not only provide value through answering your questions, but also through this recent experience I've had, so I hope you don't mind. The first thing I want to mention is the importance of taking care of yourself and allowing yourself the time for self-care. And if you're on my email list, you may have seen my last email a couple weeks ago where I mentioned that this episode would be delayed and why, and I mentioned briefly about the importance of self-care. And as survivors, we're not always the best at focusing on our needs. Our needs weren't met growing up, so we never learn that it's okay to take care of ourselves and to put our needs first sometimes. Or worse yet, we don't think we deserve to. But I want you to know that that's not true. There are going to be times in our lives when we're going to need to focus on us. And it's not going to be selfish, it's going to be necessary. I mean, in fact, we should all be doing at least one small thing each day that is just for us, to nourish ourselves. But there are going to be times like these, when you're going to go through something really challenging, where it's going to be essential to focus on self-care and to put your needs first. And to know how to ask for help. I wasn't always good at reaching out for help. I was stubborn and thought I could do it all alone. I had the mentality of, I don't need anyone because people are just going to let me down anyways. And that may happen, but I've since gotten better at asking for help, and for the most part, people have stepped up and have been there to support me, and the support of others has been crucial for me during this time. Now, I will say that it hasn't been easy for me to focus on what I need, because I don't like to let people down or not follow through on something when I said I would, but honestly, there was no way I was going to be able to work on this episode or much of anything else for that matter. And once I recognized that and accepted it, it became easier for me to take care of me and not worry about what others may think. So I just really want to encourage you to take care of yourself in times of need and know that it's okay to do so. It really is. Now, I've been going through all of the stages of grief throughout all of this. Well, maybe I haven't got to the acceptance part yet, but I learned something as I was dealing with some anger. I learned that I was better off focusing on the times that we had together rather than on the times we won't have together now. And that's where the anger was coming from, by focusing on what's been taken away from me. Now, don't get me wrong, it's perfectly normal and natural to feel anger over a situation like this, and I've allowed myself to feel it, but in the process, I was reminded of the power of gratitude. In being grateful for the times we had, I've been able to find some peace. And it reminds me that gratitude is important, period. I use something called the 5-minute journal, and each day it has you write down 3 things you're grateful for. And I like this because focusing on the things we're grateful for puts us in a healthier frame of mind. Now, I'm not talking about being grateful for the bad things that have happened to you. I mean, not at all. Those things happened and they suck. But in spite of what's happened to us, there can always be things to be grateful for, no matter how small they may be. Even if you don't feel like you have anything to be grateful for, I challenge you on that. Do you have a roof over your head? Food to eat? You have something that is allowing you to listen to this podcast? How we feel comes from what we focus on. We can choose to focus on the negative, or we can choose to focus on the positive. It's up to us. I know I'm going to have times where I'm still going to feel angry, but I'm going to write down 3 things I'm grateful for each day, and I want to encourage you to do the same. We can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we respond. And how we respond can make all the difference. The thing is that when we come from a victim mindset, we don't have control. And I don't know about you, but since I grew up not having much control, it's important for me to have control over what I can now. And I recognize the role that gratitude plays in that, and so that's why I encourage you to give it a try. Give it a try and see what happens. And one other thing I want to mention here before I get on to answering your questions has to do with taking back control. So I'm the type of person who does well with structure. To start off the year, I took about a week and really planned out my year and identified the goals I want to achieve this year. And this was the first time that I had really planned out a year so thoroughly, and I felt good about it. And I also set up a schedule for my time that, as long as I stick to it, it'll allow me to achieve those goals. Well, that kind of got turned on its head when all this happened, and just a couple weeks into the year, my plans were disrupted. And I know how difficult it can be to set goals, and of course a lot of people have New Year's resolutions and then have a hard time maintaining their motivation as the year goes on, and it can be particularly discouraging when something unexpected happens and disrupts those plans without you even having a say in the matter. And so I had a choice to make. I could say, well, poor me, and throw in the towel and forget about my plans and my goals, or I could find a way to pick myself up and adapt. Something that was really difficult for me to do was to go back to my schedule and adjust it to no longer have time set aside for my dog, for going for walks and such. Now, that's something that certainly made me feel anger, but eventually I did it, and now I have a new routine, and yeah, even though I hated having to do it, it ultimately made me feel better because I was taking back some control. Again, this comes back to not being able to control what happens to us, but controlling how we respond. So the message here is, well, two things, I guess. One, if something has happened in your life this year that has derailed you, it's not too late to get back on track. And two, find something that makes you feel more in control. If you're someone who likes structure like me, then maybe you want to set up a schedule for how to spend your time. If that's not your thing, then do one thing each day that's just for you. Set aside time to exercise or read a book, whatever you enjoy. It could even be setting boundaries with people in your life. Something that's going to ultimately make you feel better about yourself. So those are the things I wanted to share with you from my experience of losing my dog, and I thank you for allowing me to do so. I thought it was timely and relevant to this episode, and I hope that it has helped you in some way. And I think it's been helpful for me too. And I actually want to dedicate this episode to my dog Blue. This one's for you, buddy. All right, and now on to answering your questions, which is why I know you tuned in the first place. So I debated as to whether or not to use names, first names anyways, with the questions, but I'm going to just read the questions without names since not everyone indicated if that would be okay or not. So here's the first one, and it reads, I would love to know about the most healing conversation or period of time in your life as it pertains to your healing journey. Sharing from the heart can be scary, and yet I know as you choose to open up, you give so many others the permission they may need to do the same. Well, I guess that's another reason why I like to be transparent. Like I said before, it used to be really difficult for me to talk about my past because I had a lot of shame, but then I realized that it wasn't my shame to carry, and that realization has made it much easier for me to talk about it. But I know how difficult it can be to open up about the past, and that's why I really do admire each guest I've had on the show who has done just that. But it's something that you should do if and when you feel comfortable doing so. I mean, I think it can be really healing to go public, if you will, with what you've experienced, but it has to be right for you. And I do hope that in being open myself, I'm at least letting you know that it is okay if you should so choose to do the same. But to get back to the question, and it's a great one I definitely had to put some thought into, and I thought of a couple of instances that could apply, but I guess the most healing period of time in my life as it pertains to my healing journey was when I moved away from home for the first time. I was 25 years old, and I had gone to college locally, so I had stayed living with my parents, and then for a few years beyond college as well. And then I finally moved out because I was going to go to grad school in a different state. And right before that, I went to Europe by myself for 2.5 weeks. So this was a time where I really embraced independence, and it was hard at first. There was some resistance, and I wanted to go back home, but I stuck it out, both the trip and moving away for grad school. And I eventually got to a point where I appreciated my independence and freedom and felt comfortable and confident in being alone and responsible for myself. I mean, I ended up thriving on this. And I went from someone who was insecure and scared to be alone to someone who couldn't imagine having things be any other way. And since my trip to Europe was relatively short in the grand scheme of things, it's something that I've looked back on and can be proud that I did it. And it's something that I was able to use in times when I did feel scared because I would remind myself that if I could do that, I could do anything. When you challenge yourself and really push yourself outside of your comfort zone, you're going to create experiences that can never be taken away from you and that you can always draw from going forward. And we've all survived so much, and we're stronger than we realize. And it was this time in my life where things really shifted for me, and it's a time that I still draw strength from today when I have moments where I feel a little insecure or scared to do something. And as a result of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone, it's all led to the life I have today. And it's crazy how you can look back and see how it's all come together. So I'm glad that I took those chances, and I think it's true that we have to be the person and live the life today that our 80-year-old selves will thank us for. Because one day, hopefully, we will be our 80-year-old selves, and we don't want to look back and wish we had done things differently. So just some food for thought there, and great question, thank you for that. Okay, here's the next one. Hi, Melissa. I'm submitting this question as a response to your open invitation to answer questions for your podcast, The Grass Gets Greener. Congrats on reaching 100, by the way. Well, thank you. I'm African. I moved to the U.S. 10 years ago. I'm 23, male. For over 13 years of my life now, I've moved from one bully to the next. My family moved often. Everywhere I've moved, people have found something to bully me about. I've developed serious trust issues. I'm very pessimistic. I have no friends. Never dated, and my life feels like it's on the precipice of complete destruction. How can I forgive people from my past to move on? Well, forgiveness is a tricky one, but I'm happy to provide my thoughts on it. And first off, I just want to say that it's terrible that you've experienced so much bullying, and I hope that you know that it's not your fault. It can feel like it's our fault because we're being made fun of for something about us, but the fact is that it shouldn't have to be that way. We're all free to be who we are, and unless we're hurting someone else, people should respect us for who we are. But that's not how it goes, of course. Human nature doesn't work that way. People will always find a reason to belittle someone else to satisfy their own insecurities. And then what happens is we suffer in the ways you've mentioned. Trust issues, feeling pessimistic, not having any friends. I hope you also know that these are normal outcomes as a result of being bullied, and there's nothing wrong with you. I like how you're asking about forgiveness to move on. Forgiveness can set us free. But like I said, it's a tricky subject, and people tend to be divided on the matter. Some people can't fathom forgiving someone who has hurt them, and others have been able to find forgiveness and move on. Forgiveness seems to be an ongoing process, though, as there can be times where you are triggered and find that you have to forgive all over again. That said, I can say for myself that learning how to forgive those who hurt me has been tremendously helpful, and it took me a long time. You may be at a point where you want to forgive, but you might not be able to do it. I wanted to forgive for so long, but it just wasn't happening. I would trick myself into thinking that I had, only to realize a little while later that I hadn't at all. But for whatever reason, there was this one time when I heard someone talking about forgiveness and how it was for us and not for them, something that I had heard before, that it finally clicked with me, and I was able to truly find forgiveness for those who hurt me. And that's the thing, forgiveness is for us. We can forgive someone without them even having to know we've forgiven them. Now, that's typically going to mean that we're never going to get an apology, but forgiveness doesn't require an apology. Forgiveness is something we can do on our own terms and not have to wait for the other person to tell us they're sorry because they may never do so anyways. This is another opportunity to take back control, to do something for us. Now, I want to state that forgiving someone does not mean that you accept or even will forget what they did, not at all. Forgiveness isn't about accepting or forgetting, it's about letting go. It means acknowledging that we were hurt and that we've suffered a loss as a result. Time, experiences, relationships, whatever, and that we can't get that back. But I believe that forgiveness allows us to move on by letting go of any bitterness that we have that may be keeping us stuck in the past and dwelling on what it is that we've lost. There's a quote I like that I think sums it up well, and that is, "Forgiveness means letting go of the hope for a better past." But how do you do it exactly? Well, I think it's an individual thing, but like I said, forgiveness is a process. It starts by deciding that you want to forgive. And at this point, I'm actually going to reference a blog post I wrote a while back entitled 15 Tips for Finding Forgiveness When There's No Forgetting. And you can find that linked up on the show notes page at thegrassgetsgreener.com/100, the number 100. And that'll give you some ideas and things you can try. And maybe there'll be some things there that will help you in the process. So thank you for your question. I hope my answer helps, and I also hope that things get better for you, and just know that you're not alone. Okay, so here's the next question. Hi, Melissa. I love your podcast. I've learned so much from you and your guests. I was on your website and noticed you offer coaching. I could really use your help one-on-one. May I ask what your coaching sessions and programs are like, and who are your coaching techniques for? How can I sign up? Well, first off, that's awesome. Thank you for your interest in my coaching services, and I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying the podcast. But yeah, so I do offer one-on-one coaching. We would start by having an initial call that's free of charge, and it would be to see where you're at and what you're looking to get out of coaching, and to see if I'm the right person to help you with that. And if we feel like it's a good fit for both of us, then we'll come up with a plan to work together. Now, our initial call that we would have that's free of charge is a full session that would be around 90 minutes, and I do that because I want to make sure that I have the time to really understand your situation and be able to best help you. My goal during that call is to give you some strategies that you can use, whether we end up working together or not, and you might find that that call is enough and you don't need anything beyond that, and that's fine. Or you might want to continue the conversation and continue to work on areas where you feel like you need help. I like to help people figure out where they feel like they're getting stuck and come up with a plan to help them get unstuck and start living a life that they feel really good about. I like to work mostly with bullying survivors since that's my background, but I'm also open to working with survivors of other types of childhood trauma and abuse. I also like to work with individuals who have already gone through some therapy and have done some healing and are at a point in their recovery journey now where they want to focus on their future. I'm not a therapist. I can't offer you therapy, but I can help you to move forward using all the things that I've learned in my own journey and continue to learn. I'm always doing personal development stuff to continue to better myself, and I'm happy to bring all that to the table when working together. So if you resonate with me and my journey, then yeah, let's chat. And just to give some specifics as well, so right now you can sign up for 1 month at a time or 3 months at a time. And we would have 2 sessions a month, around 90 minutes each. You would also have email access to me as well in between our calls. But ultimately, we would have to talk to figure out what would be the best plan for working together based on your unique needs. So just send me an email at melissa@thegrassgetsgreener.com to follow up if it's something you're still interested in. And I look forward to hearing from you or anyone else who's interested in possibly working together. So feel free to reach out. Okay, here's the next question. Melissa, thank you for all you do. My question is about what to do about my relationship with my father. He was horrible to me in my childhood, yet I feel I must try and maintain a relationship with him. I still get scared when I see him on holidays. He is no longer abusive, thank goodness. What should I do, or how can I handle it better in order to have an easier relationship with him? Well, first off, I can understand the desire to want to continue to have the relationship. It's tough when it's a parent because we naturally want that relationship with them, even if they've hurt us. My father was not the nicest person to me when I was growing up, and we're not close as a result, but we do still have a relationship, and it's hard because I wish it could just be, quote-unquote normal, but it is what it is, and it's something I've had to come to terms with. So I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't have a relationship with your father, and I'm glad that he's at least no longer abusive. But I think in this case, in order to have an easier time having a relationship with him, I would definitely encourage boundaries. Don't be afraid to express your needs. Kind of getting back to taking care of yourself, right? And I know that can be difficult, but maybe you limit the number of times you see or talk to your father. Or if he does or says something that you don't like, then try to express that to him. And you have to be consistent with it or he won't take it seriously and will probably ignore the boundaries. I mean, it's standing up for yourself, really. And if you want to maintain a relationship with him and have it be tolerable, then I think that's what you have to do. And it sounds like, especially on the holidays, my guess is that's when you see him the most, so I would definitely make sure to be extra vigilant during those times. And I think I would also allow myself to be open to the possibility of not continuing the relationship if it's not serving you. I know that would be hard, but we have to do what's best for us. Sometimes we maintain a relationship because we don't want to hurt the other person or let them down. But again, we have to do what's best for us, and it's not our fault that they hurt us to begin with or have damaged the relationship, right? And so if it's one that doesn't continue, it's really on them. But I do hope that having boundaries can help the situation and that you're able to maintain the relationship if that's what you want, and that'll be easier for you moving forward. So I'm going to answer 2 more questions and then I'll wrap up the episode. So here's the next one. I want to launch my coaching career, but find it hard to promote my coaching because I don't feel good enough to help people even though I know I can. Memories of failure and criticism keep coming up and stop me from daring to do something outside my comfort zone. Is there something wrong with me? Why can't I get past this? Okay, well, I like this question because it can apply to different situations. In this case, we're talking about launching a coaching career, but it could be anything that's outside of our comfort zone. Now, while I don't know your background to the person who's asking this, I'm going to assume you're a survivor of some type of abuse growing up. You talk about having memories of failure and criticism and how this is stopping you from doing something outside of your comfort zone. I think a lot of us can relate to this. I mean, I talked earlier in the episode about how I pushed myself outside of my comfort zone and how scary that was. And the farther outside of your comfort zone something seems, the scarier it's going to feel. Now, you ask if there's something wrong with you. No, I don't think there's anything wrong with you, and it's perfectly natural to feel this way if you've previously experienced failure and criticism. Anyone who's been bullied and has been criticized for something can tell you that it's a natural response to want to protect yourself from experiencing that again. And you can get to a point where you're sabotaging yourself because even though you say you know you can help people, you're also having a hard time promoting yourself. So you know you can do it, but it scares you, and then you hold yourself back. You probably think of a bunch of reasons for why you can't do it, and then you talk yourself out of doing it. And the other question you ask is, well, why can't I get past this? You're probably deep down getting stuck because you're afraid to get hurt. You're afraid to fail and be criticized. Even though we might want to do something, we can end up holding ourselves back as a protective mechanism. It's easier to play it safe and stay inside that comfort zone where we have control and we know we're not as likely to fail or be criticized than it is to take that chance and not know what the outcome is going to be. You know that if you don't promote yourself, then no one's going to take you up on your offer to coach them, and that means that you can't fail them as a coach and you won't be criticized for it. That may seem like perfectly logical reasoning, except it doesn't serve us. And more importantly, it doesn't serve the people we know we can help. When we have these feelings from our past come up, it's our younger selves who are hurt, that are just trying to protect our adult selves because they think that we need it, that we're still in this dangerous situation. But most likely we don't need that protection anymore. No one likes to be criticized because we view it as a personal attack, but typically as adults we're better able to handle it when it happens. I can say for myself personally that doing some inner child work and connecting to my younger self, to my younger scared and hurt self, and letting her know that while I appreciate her looking out for me, that it's no longer necessary, that I'm safe now. And doing this has allowed me to look past a lot of that fear and put myself out there anyways. So maybe that's something you could look into that could help you as well, but I find the best way to overcome this sort of thing is to just face it. It's the only way the fear will go away, by doing it and seeing that it's not so scary after all. It's the unknown that's scary, so let's make the unknown known and release that fear. And you can do that by taking baby steps, but I would definitely encourage you and anyone listening to constantly challenge yourself to get outside of your comfort zone and see what's out there. It's where you can find all the possibilities hanging out. But I hope that helps, and I do hope that you're able to launch your coaching business and help the people that you know you can help. So, one last question. When I was a kid, I was always the one left out. They hated me. I hated myself for not being cool. I still hate myself and won't go out and meet new people because they will just hurt me. But I want friends. I want a life. Being a hermit is safer, but so dang cold and lonely. Have you experienced this too? How do you handle it? Well, yes, I have absolutely experienced this. I was always the one left out too, and I hated myself for not being cool as well. I mean, if only we had been cool, right? No, that's not it. But yes, I can totally relate, and I never tried to meet new people either because I didn't trust them to not hurt me. And seriously, especially when you don't feel like you're a cool kid, you're really afraid of rejection. I had this perception that I was someone who people would naturally criticize, and that's a terrible way to look at yourself, but it's what being rejected does to you. I think it's great that you want friends and you want to have a life. It is lonely otherwise. But of course you want friends that are not going to hurt you and who are going to accept you for who you are. I had two problems. One was being afraid to meet new people, and the other was not knowing how to meet them. I think this ties into getting out of your comfort zone as well. But anyways, for me, I started to meet new people in my work environments. And thankfully there wasn't any workplace bullying that happened, and I made a couple friends. But it also helped me to gain experience meeting new people and allowed me to work on my social skills, which were a little lacking. And it started to desensitize me to meeting new people, and I became more comfortable with it. And it also allowed me to start building trust in people again. And then as I got more comfortable with meeting new people, I started to seek out ways of meeting people who had similar interests as me, and I'd start to pick and choose who my friends were. Because that's the great thing, we get to do that. We get to choose who we allow into our lives, and that makes it less likely that we're going to get hurt. But it's so much easier now to take advantage of the internet to meet people. I definitely have several friends that I've met initially online who I wouldn't have met otherwise, and I'm grateful that that's happened and that they're now a part of my life as a result. So I guess I would encourage you to slowly put yourself out there to meet new people in a way that feels safe to you, and to definitely take advantage of the ability we have now to connect with people all over the world and to seek them out in groups online based on mutual interests. Facebook and meetup.com are a couple of good places for that. And I know that connecting with other survivors is always a good thing because they're going to get you and they're not going to want to hurt you. But slowly you build friendships and connections and social skills, and you get to a point where you have a good network of friends and you feel like you have a life again. And you also now have the skills to go out there and meet new people anytime you want to. So I hope that helps. I hope that you're able to find some friends and that they treat you well and let you know that they appreciate you for exactly who you are. So there you have it. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions. I really enjoyed getting to answer them, and I hope that my answers have been helpful. And maybe I can do another episode like this again at some point if you guys liked it too. Let me know. So thanks for listening to the show today. This has been the Grass Gets Greener podcast, episode 100. Go to thegrassgetsgreener.com/100, that's the number 100, to find the show notes and to leave a comment if you'd like, and let me know what you thought of the episode. And then come back in 2 weeks as I'll be joined by Christine Sissy White of Heal Right Now, and Wright is WRITE, as we have a great chat about healing from past trauma and abuse. So I think that you'll enjoy that one. And also, if you like what I'm doing here with the show and you want to help support it, I want to remind you that I have a Patreon campaign set up. It's over at thegrassgetsgreener.com/Patreon. And that's just a way for you to help support the show and get some rewards for doing so. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, then I invite you to check it out. It's linked up on the website as well. And also don't forget to head over to iTunes or Stitcher to leave the show a rating and review so that we can reach as many survivors as possible. And also you can now find the show on Google Play for all you Google and Android users out there, so be sure to check it out there as well. And as always, have hope.